Thanks, Marisa, and welcome everyone to our webinar. Thanks for taking the time out of your busy days today. Just a reminder, like Marisa said, we will be tracking your questions and comments on Twitter with the hashtag #IpadEnt. You can reach me on Twitter at Adam Bookman, and Propelics is at Propelics. The question that we'll be tackling today is, how do businesses realize the true value of the iPad? Now, there's absolutely no doubt that the iPad is a consumer phenomenon. A staggering number of iPads have been sold to date in a short amount of time, over 55 million, and this is a number as of December 2011. And a very large percentage of iPad owners are bringing their iPads to work. They want to use their iPads in a work environment. Now, most people want iPads, and a lot of people want to bring their iPads to work, but from a company perspective, many have not figured out exactly what to do with them. We've tried to capture this sentiment in an infographic that we call the Law of Threes. On the lower left-hand side, the beginning of the curve is characterized by a lot of novelty and hype around the iPad. Employees are very excited about bringing their iPads into the office and having it set up with email and calendar, and maybe even using some consumer app store apps for business purposes. And this initial stage is often accompanied by IT and CIO concerns about the security and management of these devices. And it isn't long in this situation until the novelty wears off and the excitement starts to wane. And many companies are still searching for the true value of the iPad, and many of our customers are still in this phase, which we call the value gap. The next stage in maturity is typically characterized by business users requesting the extension of their enterprise apps to the iPad. Business intelligence, CRM, ERP extensions onto the iPad. This brings some value, and it starts to get the juices flowing within the enterprise environment. But from our perspective, the greatest value of the iPad in the enterprise won't materialize until real innovation occurs, until new use cases are established, and until the iPad becomes central to a company's strategy and is used to change the way that companies interact with their customers, and is used to change work patterns in the environments where work is done. There's absolutely no doubt that mobility is causing disruptive change in the enterprise, and we feel that the iPad is really accelerating this disruption. And with any disruption comes challenges, both to business and to IT. During this webinar, I'm going to focus on 5 emerging challenges and then provide some tips to get moving with your iPad strategy. The consumerization of IT and the bring your own device phenomenon is real. Employees are bringing their iPads to work and asking for them to be supported, and in some cases demanding that they're supported. This is necessitating a reaction from IT, and IT is typically not used to being reactionary when it comes to introducing new technologies. The iPad is forcing IT to think beyond employer-provisioned devices, and it creates a whole bunch of new challenges around policies and governance and managing not only the device, but also apps within the device. Employees are demanding more than email. They're demanding access to corporate assets, to corporate data, and this is presenting challenges both on the business side and on the technology side. When you get past that initial hype cycle and start to generate some enthusiasm around the iPad in the enterprise, you're suddenly faced with a tremendous amount of demand from a lot of different constituents, from the executive team to the board of directors, the sales team, the service team. Folks are coming at you in all directions requesting that their data, their enterprise apps, and even ideas for apps, new apps to be created for the iPad. And this can be very overwhelming. And a lot of folks we talk to are really struggling with where to start and which constituent they should please first. So a lot of folks ask us, and I think they're still at the point of, where's the value in the iPad? And where should you start? What belongs on the iPad, and what should remain on the PC? There are a few 100,000 App Store apps and around 100,000 optimized for the iPad. And which ones of those should you provision on your iPads for your employees, like Evernote or Dropbox? In addition, there are a number of enterprise single-purpose apps that vendors are building extensions onto the iPad, like Salesforce.com, or a lot of business intelligence tools like MicroStrategy, ClickView, Business Objects, Cognos. Should you enable those on the iPad, and do they bring any value? And then finally, what apps can be created that really will move the needle, that will lead your organization to new ways to interact with your customers, that will help shorten sales cycles, lead to more revenue, or lead to a more productive workforce? Once you've identified an app idea, the challenges don't stop. There's often a challenge of taking very, very complex enterprise processes and even more complex data relationships and marrying those to an iPad app, which is characterized by its simplicity and the elegant user experience that it enables. And it's often challenging to identify where in a very complicated process map and a data flow you can identify scenarios to move the needle. And we'll talk about that in a minute. And the final challenge is securing the mobile enterprise. And this is no small challenge. As I mentioned earlier, there's a significant demand from employees to handle many different types of devices. So there's questions around which devices should we support and which should we not support? How do we securely allow access to assets that go deeper than email? How do we create policies for employee-liable devices? And how do we deal with new concerns that arise from that, like privacy of your employees with their own devices? And what technology is necessary to help manage these devices, the data on the devices, and now we want to manage devices at the application layer, not only at the device layer. And these are some things that Chandra from Zenprise will discuss in a few minutes. But enough with the challenges. Let's move on to some tips to get the most value out of the iPad. So we've come up with five tips to help you get going with your iPad strategies. The first tip we can offer is think beyond customer apps. There's a tendency with a lot of our customers to think about what apps they should be creating for their consumers. And this is absolutely necessary. It's great to do, and to be honest, it's table stakes for a lot of our customers. They need to have an iPad app out there just to keep with the competition. But consumer apps are not the only place where you'll find value for within the enterprise for iPad apps. There are scenarios for employees, for employee productivity, and employees interacting with other employees within your organization. We're finding a tremendous amount of value in one-to-one apps where employees are armed with iPads when they're interacting with customers. So imagine bankers taking the iPads to meetings with retail or business banking customers, insurance agents meeting their customers and explaining their policies, even building a policy on the fly with a customer using an iPad, and being able to close the deal on the back end through a signature pad on the iPad. Using the iPad, you might have gone into an auto dealer and using the auto pad while you're walking around with a dealer on the floor of the dealership. And also extensions of your company, your partners and your resellers. There may be great ideas in these fronts. So really, when you're thinking about the universe of iPad apps, think beyond the customer. The next tip that we'd like to make is that an app is not a strategy. Constituents will come at you with lots of ideas, and just because someone wants an app doesn't mean that it's a good idea, doesn't mean that it's going to be a good app. And just because you have an app doesn't mean that you have a strategy. Something that we recommend you doing, if you haven't already, is to define your business drivers for the iPad and lay out which needles you're trying to move. Are you trying to use the iPad to have better interactions with your customers, to shorten your sales cycles, to increase revenue? What are your goals through your iPad strategy that you're trying to enable through your iPad strategy? This will help you prioritize your app ideas. And from there, you can build a roadmap to execute your iPad strategy. And this, going through a strategy exercise, helps remove the noise associated with a lot of new ideas. And it's something we highly recommend, and we're working with our clients to build iPad strategies, just like you would with any other disruptive technology. When our customers and their employees are thinking about what iPad apps belong on the iPad, there's a natural tendency to request apps that port the functionality of their enterprise apps onto the iPad, essentially to use the iPad as another screen. We see this a lot, and because a lot of the innovation hasn't occurred and the ideas haven't been generated yet, this isn't surprising. But when we look for really great, valuable iPad apps, we look for apps that move needles, that tell stories, that answer questions, that are built for very specific scenarios, that are built for subsegments of processes, that handle the initial customer meeting, the loan review, the scenarios that are built with calls to action in mind, scenarios that can close a transaction, whatever that transaction happens to be. With the iPad, when it comes to user experience, end user and customer expectations are higher than they've ever been, and they're higher than, they're certainly higher than they are with enterprise apps. And apps that you built, they're built to be shared. They're built to be collaborative. They're built to, you're sharing the screen with your customer. You're not hiding behind your screen and not showing the customer what's on it like you would in many transactions with enterprise apps. With the iPad, you're no longer constrained to a power cord. Business doesn't have to be done in a conference room. It doesn't have to be done at a cubicle. You can take your message wherever your customers are, wherever your customers feel comfortable. That's one of the beauties of the iPad. You can use it to augment the environment that your customer's in, no matter what environment they are, whether they're in a coffee shop, or they're in a shop floor, they're on your showroom, or you're even in your customer's house. And our final tip here is to, if you haven't already, begin your MDM roadmap. Don't resist the BYOD phenomenon. IT should start working with the business on developing solid policies, governance, and associated metrics. And you should definitely take a look at what are relatively new technologies like Zenprise to help manage and monitor your MDM policies so you remain secure. But at the same time, you're allowing the business to innovate. You're not blocking that innovation. And Chandra will speak more on this in a few minutes. At the beginning of my talk, I mentioned that the question is, where do you find the value for the iPad in business? And we've gone through relatively quickly a series of challenges and a series of tips. But in summing this up, what we can recommend is this. One, that it's important to define your business drivers, to know what needles you're trying to move, and then weigh every app idea against the business benefit. 2, the greatest value will be derived when you look beyond email, when you look beyond extending point apps to the iPad, when you look beyond virtualization. It's important to look for scenarios that you can enable through the creation of an iPad app. Keep in mind that the iPad allows you to challenge the way you interact with customers, the way you interact with prospects, partners, and each other as employees. It allows you to create new business models, and that's really where we think the most powerful scenarios will come from, through innovation and the building of corporate iPad apps. And the absolute most important thing that I can share with you is don't wait. Get started. You don't want to miss out. Your competitors are innovating, and it's important that you not let them gain a competitive advantage. So, get started and get started quickly. At this point, I'm going to hand it over to Chandra, but at the end of his talk, I'll come back and discuss a special offer we have to get you started with your iPad strategies and to answer any questions that you might have. Just a reminder again that you can ask questions here on WebEx or on Twitter. We're tracking the hashtag #IPadEnt. Thanks, and Chandra, over to you.
Thank you, Adam. And thank you, everybody, for taking the time to attend today's webinar. So let's dive right into how to address security as part of your enterprise mobility deployment. This is probably no surprise for any of us. The mobility space obviously has seen a dramatic level of change in just the last few years. About 2 years ago, we didn't even have the iPad. And in the first few months of the iPad's release, nobody really anticipated that it'll exert the kind of influence that it has in the devices that businesses use. Last year, we saw an explosion in terms of the number of apps, with an average of about 60 apps per device. And some of these apps, even though, or most of them are consumer apps, but businesses have developed very specific industry vertical applications as well. And this year we're seeing that businesses are getting really serious about mobile, with bring your own device policies and the trend being well underway. Lots of organizations are using mobile to actually transform their business and the way that transactions are completed. We'll focus our attention both today on bring your own device scenarios, as well as corporate liable devices and how to manage them securely. So I want to quickly talk about 3 common enterprise mobility use cases and what this means in the context of the enterprise mobility deployment. We can easily imagine a scenario where an executive is able to quickly share data that is on their iPad with a coworker at a coffee shop in an unrestricted Wi-Fi environment, or an employee at the office being able to download consumer applications on their personal smartphone while still being able to access corporate resources from it. So in all of these different scenarios, what are the considerations that organizations are going through? Is the connection secure? What type of applications are safe to use? And is the data protected, with data leakage concerns? How do we address that? So it's best to understand this in the context of how mobile fits in with other IT protections that have been in place. And this is what we call the mobile blind spot. So if you look at how the enterprise security market worked until the mid-2000s, many businesses spent a lot of money and time getting secure and compliant. They invested in best-of-breed tools like anti-malware protection, application proxies and firewalls, and DLP systems. But with now mobile devices being on the scene, all of the security and compliance holes that we spent a lot of time fixing are completely open again, because mobile devices tend to bypass all of these controls. Oftentimes, you can't see what mobile devices are doing on the network. We can't necessarily regulate or grant access and control what apps people can get access to if they are just on a corporate VPN. And also, we can't control what type of bad applications they are exposing the corporate network to. And of course, we can't control the data that they are downloading to their device, and then eventually what they do with that data. So in fact, one of the prominent industry analysts, Jack Gold, predicts that this year alone there will be a heightened level of data breaches due to mobile devices. And CSO magazine actually predicts that 17% of enterprises have already experienced a data breach as a result of mobile devices. So let's look at some of the opposing forces that are at play when it comes to mobility for enterprises. Just like other challenges that IT encounters, enterprise mobility brings up several issues to consider. On the one hand, from a business perspective, it is important to leverage the latest technological advances to deliver better customer service, to support employees and their need for working efficiently. But obviously, businesses also want to innovate and share data in a hyper-competitive market. There's obviously the advantages to be had in the real-time ability to support field workers and so on through mobile devices. On the other hand, from an administrative perspective, CIOs and IT administrators are concerned about security and sensitive corporate data in particular. They're also concerned about compliance and regulatory issues and the cost of supporting mobile devices, and also increasing the number of points of failure and managing risk overall. It's useful to think in terms of your enterprise mobility deployment in terms of a framework that we're calling the mobile maturity model. One of the ways that we like to think about our customers' requirements is understanding where they are in their adoption journey for mobility, and we use this as a guide. So some organizations today are allowing mobile devices on their network, but they are managing them in an ad hoc way on a one-on-one basis. And we're calling this essentially unmanaged, with where the BYOD policies are in place, or the BYOD permissions are given, but without actively managing those devices. At the next level, we have organizations that have invested in a base-level MDM functionality with the lock, wipe, and basic lifecycle management capabilities. And beyond that, some of our BYOD customers also have security requirements that they need to think about. Maybe they're in a highly regulated industry or handle a lot of sensitive data, and here they go beyond just the device and have enterprise-grade security policies in place. And then at the top level, and tying together with what Adam talked about with the iPad and the enterprise, a lot of organizations have optimized around mobile applications, and they have invested in the ability to create targeted applications for their enterprise that they are able to, for example, deploy to salespeople and logistics companies arming workers in a distribution center with ruggedized Androids, for example, and so on. So I want to talk about some of the key steps involved in getting mobile devices under control from a security standpoint. At the outset, it's obviously important to understand where you are in your current mobile deployment and what you're dealing with, so that a quick analysis of your mobile network can show the extent of rogue or unmanaged devices that are connecting into your network. Next, it's useful to connect in terms or understand what the devices are that are going to be managed, and what it is that we're going to be managing through the life cycle of those devices, starting from the time that they are provisioned all the way to being decommissioned. And we'll talk about that in a second. And what is your bring your own device strategy in your organization? What type of devices are going to be allowed, and what are the security rules around the access from these devices? What type of applications are going to be allowed in the context of bring your own devices versus corporate liable devices? And it's important, obviously, to look at compliance requirements and what type of requirements the organization is bound by, and how mobility will affect the auditing and control for these requirements. And also think about how sensitive corporate information will be protected in the context of these devices. How will you translate the controls that you have in place around data to the mobile environment. Next, it's useful to know what kind of user policies should be in place to address different user groups and constituents. What type of policies are going to be used for field workers, for example, versus what type of policies and controls will be in place for satellite offices or the executive team. And last but not the least, it's useful to take advantage of well-established work processes and manage mobile devices alongside the rest of your IT infrastructure. So as a next step, let's take a look at what we're calling essentially table stakes functionality. I mean, the mobile device management space has, at the very least, you need to have these types of capabilities in the life cycle of the device to be able to manage them. At the level of configuring devices, you may want to be able to set policies around the minimum requirements in terms of number of passcode digits, what is the expiration rules for those passcodes, and you may want to define one set of connectivity rules in terms of Wi-Fi networks for corporate liable devices and maybe another for individually liable or employee-owned devices. And then at the next level, for provisioning the devices, how are we going to have users self-service their enrollment process? Should we provide an enterprise app store which essentially allows the employees to download only a whitelisted set of applications to their devices? And what about delivering policies and applications over the air? So those are considerations at the provisioning level. And then the next step is obviously securing the devices by configuring native security settings, what type of blacklisting and whitelisting of applications we're going to configure, and so on. And then the next step also is the provisioning or providing of help desk functions and remote support capabilities and troubleshooting. And then the ongoing monitoring of these devices is obviously a very critical part of supporting these mobile devices. What type of reports do we need to generate to ensure compliance requirements are met? Are we monitoring for quality of service and device tasks and telecom expense management and so on? And then last but not the least, obviously, what is the process around decommissioning and end-of-lifing some of these devices, say upon employee departure, or if the device were to get lost? How do we deal with wiping the device off of basically all of the corporate data on it, or perform a selective wipe if it is an employee-owned device? So we believe that it is important to consider requirements beyond the device. A lot of mobile management solutions today focus exclusively on the device management aspect of the solution, and mobility obviously transcends just the device into the applications that are deployed, the mobile network itself, and most importantly, the data on the mobile device. And this is what we call end-to-end security and compliance across all layers of the mobile enterprise. So it is obviously important to configure all of the devices and have all of the table stakes functionality that we talked about at the device level. We'll talk in the next few slides about the applications, the network, and the data. At the mobile app front, what organizations and IT administrators are seeking is the ability to protect their network from bad applications. And by bad applications, it's a combination of both applications that may potentially distribute malicious software or spyware, as the case might be, and transmit information about the user's device outside, but also productivity robbing applications in the enterprise. So administrators want the ability to blacklist certain applications, restrict others, and in the extreme case, even shut down or not even allow the launching of certain types of applications. And also, as I mentioned, with VPN, the access to the back-end applications is an all-or-nothing proposition. But how do we answer the question of how can we access applications on a one-on-one basis? And how do we secure some of these critical apps with encryption on the air as well as with data at rest? And also ensuring of app performance and the quality of service for these applications. The key requirements on the mobile network front, the IT administrators want to know how to protect corporate networks from intruders, block non-compliant or jailbroken devices, and have visibility into who's doing what. As an example, the capability to integrate with enterprise security information and event management solutions, such as those with ArcSight or RSA and Vision and so on, and Splunk, in this case, the example that I'm showing here is an integration with the Splunk tool that allows IT administrators to not only visualize security information, but ascertain certain potential insider threats in terms of the mobile enterprise. So this type of integration also allows for compliance reporting and the correlation of log data with other IT infrastructure for advanced alerting and reporting. So the example that we're seeing here is a device that has accessed the network that we're able to correlate through the SIM log files and be able to show the fact that access to this particular user was blocked. And the ability to integrate directly via web services with a number of IT management solutions like Microsoft Operations Manager or Tivoli or HP OpenView helps with seamlessly leveraging existing IT infrastructure to address mobile management and provide that proof of compliance, as I mentioned. On the data front, what we've seen is that at a high level, businesses are concerned about data security. A recent IT survey about mobile security concerns showed that data leakage prevention, data loss from mobile devices, and data encryption were top concerns for most IT administrators. And this is no surprise, obviously, because mobile devices, with mobole devices, data can be lost without the right controls being in place. And obviously, it's harder to claw that data back once it's left the safe confines of the organization. So is there an ability to integrate with corporate content management to protect the data? How can we exercise fine-grained control over that data? IT wants to basically help solve what we're calling the Dropbox issue. How can we prevent a user who may inadvertently leak sensitive information out of the company from their mobile device by maybe syncing to an external storage environment? And lastly, how can we protect data without necessarily changing the overall end user's experience? As an example, here's a set of screens that show you how you would set up a data control policy with a Zenprise product. What we are showing here is a set of capabilities that can be configured with an enterprise storage container like SharePoint. And we can secure documents by configuring individual sharing rules around groups of documents and talk about the type of permissions that we want to provide. Do we want to provide copy-paste privileges? Do we want to allow that document to be emailed out of the mobile device, for example? And how can we time expire those documents? Can we set up rules around how long the document will be valid before it is automatically wiped out? So if you take a look at that, this is an example of how it is enforced on a particular device. On this iPad, for example, this particular white paper was not yet ready to be shared with the rest of the world. So this user is being prevented from syncing the application or syncing the document or emailing it or printing it and so on. But maybe there is another document that we want to allow the free sharing of that information with. So in this particular case, this document is something that all of the controls are enabled, and the user can feel free to share that information. So what are some of the top capabilities to look for in enterprise-grade mobile device management solutions? So one of the ways that mobile device management should enable businesses is that they should be obviously easy for both administrators as well as end users. Does it offer real-time integration with LDAP systems or Active Directory systems to import user names and groups and basically access control rules? Is it simple to set up in terms of the policies that are governing the access to corporate assets? and how easy is it to modify if an employee leaves one group and joins a different group in the company, and so on. And also, from an end user perspective, is the enrollment process painless? Does the enrollment process, for example, require additional steps in terms of needing location-based services to be turned on? Or if it's an Android device, for example, does it require users to have to set up a Google account and things like that? Those steps obviously require additional investment on the part of the end user and may cause support issues. So as the next step, is the solution architected for security? One of the most important things to remember, obviously, is think of mobile devices just like any other endpoints in the corporate network. And obviously, the solution that you're seeking should obviously address all of the security rules that we have come to know about data in the DMZ. Does it have to cache any database entries in the DMZ? And does the solution offer both cloud and on-premise deployment options? Does the solution offer end-to-end compliance, as we spoke about, at the data level, at the application level, and at the network? Can we block devices that may be coming in to the corporate network if compliance rules aren't met? If the policy, and I think most organizations would want this, is if jailbroken devices can be blocked even before they attempt to enroll into the system. And also, last but not the least, what kind of support can you expect for these types of mobile device management solutions? How well does the organization support different geographies and in different languages? And also, more importantly, as we saw in the mobile maturity curve, for organizations that are centering around optimizing their business with mobile applications, what type of mobile business optimization support with application performance and security and app intelligence capabilities can be solution support? So far, the presentation has been sort of about best practices around mobile device management, and I want to indulge you in a short commercial around Zenprise. And it's one thing for us to say that we are a leader in the mobile device management space and the secure MDM space, but another for Gartner and Forrester to say so. In their latest report last July, Gartner identified critical mobile device management capabilities across a variety of vendors, and they shortlisted some of these capabilities for MDM solutions. And they placed Zenprise at the top of the stack. And Forrester, in their most recent MDM overview report, gave us perfect scores across the board for both our on-premise as well as cloud solutions. And we have more than 1,000 enterprise customers who run their mobile enterprises entirely on Zenprise. With that, I'd like to conclude my portion of the presentation and also leave you with this resource that you can tap into. We offer weekly product demos that any of you can sign up for. The link is up there. We also have short product demos there that you can view at your leisure. And we also offer free trials of the product. You can contact our sales team at sales@zenprise.com to set that up. I'll actually pass it on to Adam Bookman again to talk about the Propelics offer that he mentioned earlier. Adam?
Great. Thanks, Chandra. So as I mentioned as one of our tips that, we really feel that it's important to get you going with your iPad strategies, Propelics has developed 3 Kickstart offerings that are 1-week workshops to get you going no matter where you are in your iPad strategy. We have one around an iPad app strategy Kickstart to help you define your iPad app roadmap. We have one if you have an app idea and you want to take it from a back of a napkin idea to an actual working prototype, we have a 1-week iPad app rapid prototyping workshop. And if you're concerned around your MDM strategy and you're looking to get started with handling policies and governance and metrics, we have a 1-week Kickstart for an MDM strategy. For folks who attend this webinar, we're doing something special. We're offering 20% off any of our 3 1-week Kickstarts if you sign up in March. You can find information about this and contact us at propelics.com, and we set up a special page for the webinar where you can download the webinar slides, you can link to the recorded webinar once we have it up, and you can access information about any of our 3 offers as well as sign up for our 20% off offering at propelics.com/iPadEnt. So I think I'll turn it back to Marisa.
Great, thanks, Adam. We do have some questions coming through, and then I would also like to encourage everyone to go ahead and submit any questions they might have using the Q&A function. It should be at the bottom of your screen. And we can start with one that came in earlier. It is, and this one is probably best for Chandra. Can Zenprise let iPads interact with Active Directory?
Yes, Zenprise manages Active Directory integration basically to allow devices or allow the Zenprise management server to import user groups and users directly through real-time integration. This allows us to at all times be aware of users and which users are in the system, which users have been removed. It actually eases the administrator's burden because through Active Directory integration, all of the users and groups are imported into the Zenprise Mobile Manager.
Great. The next question is, does Zenprise, I'm sorry, let me repeat that. Does the Zenprise platform for hosting mobile apps, is Zenprise the platform for hosting mobile apps, or do you develop and manage enterprise applications based on customer requirements?
So if I were to repeat the question, is Zenprise a platform for hosting mobile apps, or do you develop and manage enterprise applications based on customer requirements? No, Zenprise is in the business of making sure that mobile devices are securely managed on the enterprise. We don't help organizations to develop mobile apps. Propelics certainly helps with iPad strategies for organizations. But Zenprise basically helps with hosting mobile apps, certainly in the Enterprise App Store. We are able to set up an Enterprise App Store, and enterprises can create a list of applications that they want to host on that Enterprise App Store, and those applications are automatically provisioned onto the managed devices through the Zenprise Mobile Manager.
Okay. And the next question, this one is for Adam. Can you give some examples of the trade-offs organizations have had to make when considering user experience versus full features? What is your experience with this, and where do you draw the line?
Sure. Well, like we mentioned on our slides, user experience is extremely important with iPad apps. And when you talk about full features, you really want to, that's why we recommend limiting it to specific scenarios. So using an iPad app for a specific purpose, and then maybe including multiple scenarios, making multiple scenarios available within one iPad app, or having multiple iPad apps that deal with various scenarios. So we have experience, and we talk to a lot of customers who are looking at bringing full applications onto the iPad, that are really interested in using virtualization, using the iPad as another screen, using the iPad to have access to your entire SAP environment, or your entire Salesforce environment, or all your business intelligence reports, or all your documents on SharePoint. And we simply don't think that is the best use of the iPad, that those might be valuable, those might be something that you arm on the iPad, but what really will make the iPad valuable is when you can limit the functionality on the iPad, but make the functionality work really, really well to enable you to interact with your customer in a way that doesn't force you to go in and out of various applications, doesn't force you to find documents, to find screens, to find fields to enter. So limiting the functionality actually makes the experience a lot better.
Okay, and then another question for Adam. Can you share some of the discrete use cases that you're doing on iPads and how they differ from the full app?
Okay. I'm not sure I fully understand that question, but I'll give it a shot. For one, I'll give you a couple examples, one in the retail environment, which is an employee-based example, and one in a banking environment. We're working with a retail customer that has a chain of stores, and they're building an iPad app for the specific purpose of regional managers going out to the various stores that they manage to have discussions with store managers. And the app combines information from a large number of corporate applications. It's not limited to a single point application. When regional managers go out to the stores, they're able to walk the store with the store manager and discuss company performance. They're able to discuss regional performance, store performance. Some of that comes from BI systems. Some of it comes from brochures and PDFs that are on their SharePoint environment. And they're able to look at new products that are coming into the store and what incentives are being offered to the stores. And those are also coming from two separate systems. So one iPad app is looking at the scenario specifically for store managers, regional managers to have better conversations with store managers. But the scenario involves pulling in functionality, limited pieces of functionality from various enterprise apps to tell the story. The second example is we built an app for a regional bank that allows business bankers to go out to introductory meetings with potential new customers. And these meetings typically happen at the customer's location. So these customers don't come into the bank. The business bankers go to them. And what happened in the past was typically the business bankers went in with, a briefcase or a laptop and often a bunch of paperwork in terms of brochures and applications. And what we've done is we've built an app that integrates with the CRM system, that allows the bankers to look at who they're going to visit and what they're visiting about, and usually it's an introductory call. Then it allows the bankers to show a short video about the bank, to share some product information about the loan products, the deposit accounts, the credit cards that they offer, and then it allows them to see what the customer is interested in and sign them up right in that first interaction on the iPad to configure a loan, to apply for a credit card, and allows signature capture so the customer or prospect can sign right on the iPad. So it takes you through that whole scenario of the initial meeting and allows you to get, to really shorten the sales cycle and allows you to close the deal.
Great, thanks, Adam. And then, Chandra, you had talked about being able to secure data in your DLP offering. How does that address the Dropbox issue? Do you integrate with collaboration tools?
Yes. So the DLP capability integrates with secure corporate containers like SharePoint, for example, and some of these content management systems. And the way that it addresses the Dropbox issue is that, as I showed during the presentation, enterprises and IT administrators can configure secure documents differently from documents, for example, that those security rules don't necessarily have to apply. And when the secure container on the device is synced with the enterprise repository, it automatically applies those rules on top of those documents, and it prevents the emailing or the syncing or the forwarding of that document outside of that device. Some of the other documents that don't necessarily have those restrictions applied on them can be obviously freely shared or downloaded to Dropbox and so on. So it's entirely up to the enterprise to control those sets of rules around how the data should be protected.
Great, thanks. And another question for Chandra. What is your advice for organizations who want to offer BYOD and corporate-issued devices alongside each other?
Definitely investing in an MDM solution that has the capability to apply a unique set of rules to both BYOD devices and corporate liable devices is a very important thing to do. Now, Zenprise has prioritized development around the capabilities to help our customers manage and separate personal and corporate data. So we do it at two levels. At the base level, we enable the separation of personal and corporate data through standard MDM features like wipe and selective wipe. And we also enable our customers to establish a reliable distinction between corporate liable versus individually liable devices and apply different policies to each of these through the Zenprise Mobile Manager. And we can also help them take different actions on each of these types of devices and prove policy compliance on each of those types of devices as well. At a more advanced level, though, we're also able to enable the separation of corporate and personal data by creating a secure container around enterprise resources on the device and give the ability for the enterprise to remove this container upon the employee departure, for example.
Great, thanks, Chandra. And then I have another question for Adam. Do you see a lot of customers asking you for a good framework for determining the value of iPads for the purpose of prioritizing who goes first?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of our customers are coming to us, and they're either coming to us, they're coming for a couple of reasons. One is they know they want to use the iPad, but there aren't very many ideas to get started. And what's happening more often now is that folks are coming to us saying that we have just so much demand for the iPad, there's so many ideas, and how do we prioritize what makes sense to put on the iPad? And how do we know if we have an idea that it's a good idea? And how do we go about prioritizing not only if the business benefit is there, but how complex is the app going to be to build? And how ready are we to use the app if we actually launch it? And also, how innovative is the app? So we have a proprietary prioritization method to help our customers filter their app ideas, and we bring to the table a lot of best practices and brainstorming in what are good ideas. And then we build out their iPad roadmap so they can quickly get going with their iPad app strategies.
Thanks, Adam. And it looks like we have time for just one more question. How can Zenprise help with managing personal versus business data separately?
So yeah, that was a question along the lines of what I answered earlier, Marissa, which is that we allow the ability to separate the business and personal information through the management of user groups. We can set up groups of users that have BYOD devices versus groups of users that have corporate liable devices, and set different MDM policies for each of those groups and how they're managed. So we can, as I mentioned, apply base level features like selective wipe and wipe on these devices. We can also establish that distinction fairly clearly and actually take unique sets of actions against one type of device versus the other. And we also allow at an advanced level the separation of the corporate and the personal data by creating that secure container and the ability to remove this container upon, say, the device loss or employee departure. But more importantly, this is a very unique capability as well, the ability to time expire some of these documents and access control for those documents through that DLP solution that I mentioned. And in the case of Android devices as well, we enable the end user to have a personal screen as opposed to a corporate screen through a Zenprise mobile virtualization capability, if you may. And the users can toggle between the two different screens, and they can download personal apps on their personal screen versus just keep the corporate data separate. So those are the ways that Zenprise can help companies handle BYOD versus business-owned devices.
Got it. Thanks. Okay, and with that, that concludes the webinar for today. I would just like to let everybody know that a recording or a recorded version of the webinar will be sent out to you later this afternoon. And so keep an eye on your inbox for that. And any questions that were not answered, we will go ahead and put together a fact sheet and include that in the email that we'll send out to all later this afternoon. Thank you again for joining us, and we hope you have a great day.
Thank you.